Hey, welcome to Whatcha Doin with Brandon Horwin.
And Sophie Williams. And today's special guest
Hi,
is.
I'm Allan Krill. I am an actor and a singer, and currently, currently starring in Jagged Little Pill on Broadway. As soon as we can get back to it.
Well, welcome, Sean. We're psyched to have you on today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Um, so we ask this question most of our episodes because we like to hear your journey to theater. So can you just take us through a little bit how you got your start, sort of, where the roads led you to Jagged Little Pill today?
My journey in theater. Wow. High school. It began in high school. I was very, very involved in both art and music when I was in high school. I was very involved in the band and thought that I was going to be a commercial artist. So I was studying art pretty much my whole, um, you know, time in elementary and junior high and high school, and thought I was going to be a graphic designer. But it was the music that led me to actually get on stage. They were doing a production of a musical called Snoopy, and they needed a trombone player to stand off stage and do the voice of the adults, the and so I had a mute and I stood off stage, and whenever the stage manager would cue me, I would do my teacher voice, and I was terrified the entire time. Never thought in a million years I would step on stage. But then the next musical they did was Once Upon a Mattress, and my friends encouraged me to audition, and I did, and I got the role of Sir Harry. And then I played, when I was a senior, I played Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors, and it was really that show that sort of solidified my love of theater. There was a moment in that show, his soliloquy in the second act, that just sort of, I fell in love with the whole idea of theater in general, not even just musical theater, just the idea of the collective experience of sitting in a room with people and sharing a story really clicked in at that moment, like in my soul. And so I went to college the next year and studied art and music and theater. Didn't know what I wanted to focus on. And by the end of that year, I realized that I wanted to focus on acting. So that's what I did. And by the end of my college experience that was at Wayne State University in Detroit, I actually, this summer between my junior and senior years, I was cast in a show called Forever Plaid. There was a production in Detroit. It started in New York, but there were productions then that popped up all over the country, Vegas and LA and Detroit and Chicago. And so I auditioned, one of my very first auditions I ever went to, professional auditions, and I got the understudy position. And so the summer between my junior and senior year, I joined the union and sort of started my journey in professional theater. And then that show ended up taking me to Chicago. I auditioned for the Chicago company and got that, and that's really the sort of springboard to how it all happened. I moved to Chicago after college and did that show for 2 years, and then started doing Chicago theater, and then that all led to, a couple 3 decades later, where I am right now. So it's been a good ride.
Yeah, so just going off of that, you made your Broadway debut in Mamma Mia.
Hmm.
What was it like to just burst onto the scene with a show with that much energy?
I mean, the show is just such a blast. And I had done it already for 2 years on tour. I played Sam on tour. I believe that was 2006 to seven. And then, yeah, it was thrilling. I went back to Chicago after that, and they called me and said that they wanted to move me into the Broadway company. I think I was the third or fourth replacement. I think I was the third replacement, actually. And and it was thrilling, you know. I mean, it was Carolee Carmello playing Donna at the time, and I was such a huge fan and completely starstruck, but it was just, it was amazing. It was a dream come true, you know, to move to New York and then immediately go into you know, a big successful Broadway show, and people love it so much, and you know, the joy that it brings to people, and talking to people after the show. It was a definitely a year I will never forget, for sure.
Yeah, so you said you also did it on tour.
Hmm.
Yeah, so what are the differences between playing a role on Broadway versus doing the tour version?
Well, there are a lot of differences. First of all, just they're mostly technical differences, really. I mean, like, sort of what you do to sort of keep yourself, you know, able and capable of doing the show 8 times a week when you're traveling around. At that point, the tour was, um, it was primarily, I think we sat down for 2 or 3 weeks in some places, but it was a lot of 1 week stops at that point. It had been touring for a good 5 years at that point when I joined. So it really becomes about making sure you get enough rest, making sure your voice is you know, in top shape to sing it 8 times a week, and that can be difficult when you're touring, because you know, the circumstances, your environment changes constantly. And I remember there was this trick that Laurie Wells, who played Donna my first year, it was Laurie Wells, and Carrie Menalakis was my Sophie. And Laurie told me this trick that if you drink, if you if you eat honey from a local producer, it's supposed to help with allergies. And that was a big thing, was that you would go from one environment that was like warm and dry to, you know, then literally within 2 hours you were in an environment that was, you know, humid and cold or whatever, and it would just wreak havoc with your body, you know, and your voice. So the honey trick was a good one, because it's supposed to naturally fight off something about the, you know, the bees and the chemicals in the honey from the bees that are local, and it helps you fight off. I don't know. Maybe it was just tricking me, but it made me get, somehow I got through it. 2 years on tour was a long time. I mean, mostly it's just hard to be away from home that long, you know.
So
We
bouncing
went
off
to
of that,
we
you
went we went to Mexico and Canada, and we went all over the place. We went down into Mexico, and that was thrilling, because Mexico, I didn't know this until I did this, but uh, are Mexico's just a huge fan of ABBA. They love ABBA, and so I mean, we went there, and it was like we were rock stars. It was amazing. We were in this giant, like an amphitheater with jumbotrons, and it was truly incredible. That was in Mexico City. It was amazing.
That's awesome. So bouncing off that a bit, you've done a number of shows regionally, including Chicago Shakespeare, La Jolla Playhouse, Kennedy Center. So can you talk a bit about the difference between crafting shows? You know, some of them were crafted just for the venue, like the Kennedy Center, versus crafting something for, you know, a more large scale sort of run like Broadway.
Right. Hey, it truly depends. You know, it changes from show to show, really, how that process happens. When you know, when you're lucky enough to know, like with Jagged Little Pill, you know, we knew that the goal was to go to Broadway. So it was, when we did the run at Cambridge a couple years ago, it was, you're just very focused, and you're focused long term. But when you're doing something regionally, I almost I almost prefer it, because it's really truly, it's just easier. I'm not saying that large commercial venues, like on Broadway, and, you know, long commercial runs aren't focused on the art, but it is easier to focus on the actual, what are we creating here? Is it a good piece of theater? I think it's easier to do that when it is a regional theater that is they know you're only doing the run for 3 months, or 2.5 or whatever it is. And it's about pleasing the people that are going to be able to come and see it during that run, and about, like I said, creating a good piece of art. And again, I don't mean to say that that doesn't happen on Broadway. Obviously that happens on Broadway, but it's a little split focus, because it's also, how can we create this amazing thing that is good and true and honest and earnest, but also how can we make it sell, which isn't a factor as much in a lot of regional, not-for-profit theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that kind of brings us to our next question. As we mentioned, you are currently starring in a Jagged Little Pill on Broadway. So can you talk a bit about creating your role as Steve Healy in, something that is a jukebox musical, but doesn't at all feel like a jukebox musical?
Yeah, it's been one of the greatest joys of my career, I would say, playing Steve. It isn't always easy um, to do something like that. It's a very difficult show, in that it is embracing and handling difficult issues,
Mhm.
sensitive issues. And so what I loved about it was that it was, from the start, there was so much care, and there was a need to respect anyone who might come and see our show that would be struggling with any of the issues that we were presenting, that we were imbuing into our show. And as Steve, it was interesting, because it was, it's a lot of, I think a lot of Steve's issues are kind of the bedrock of the problems that arise in the show. Steve's big issue really is workaholism. This very American idea that the more you work, the more successful you are. But what the reality of that, many people find, is that the more you work, the less you actually are nurturing your personal relationships, the less you feel your family, your wife, your kids. And it isn't just men. Obviously, women are dealing with this as well. Anyone who has to support, an entire family unit knows the sort of struggle involved in that bargain that you make, and that's the bargain that Steve and MJ made. I think they said, well, I'll stay home and take care of the kids, and I'll go to work and do this. And then they realize, 18 years, 19, 20 years later, that they don't really know each other anymore. And so tackling that issue um, was really kind of delicious as an actor, and but it was also, I think, sort of tapping into, as I was saying earlier, this sort of bedrock issue of toxic masculinity that I really do feel like is the springboard for so many of the other problems in the show that we're tackling. And it's subtle in our show, but it does deal with it. What Nick goes through is firmly rooted in toxic masculinity. Obviously, the sexual violence is, and but even just the fact, I think a huge message in our show is all about that communication is healing. And we know that young men are not always taught to feel their feelings or talk about their feelings, and that's a huge problem, and it creates this environment where no one feels safe talking about how they feel, or their fears or their weaknesses. Um, Children, women, men, everyone is just like, well, I'll just deal with this on my own, and then it festers and it turns into something else, a different problem. It manifests itself in a very different way. So all of that said, it's been an amazing process to create Steve, because I do think he's a good guy, but we were very careful to not, we didn't want to make, the white middle-aged guy the hero of the story. That's not that's not what we want to say. That there is no real hero in our story. It's like everyone is the hero for being human and making it through these struggles we deal with, which I love.
That's amazing. I love that. So you got to record an OBC cast album that is so exciting. And with Tom Kitt's new arrangements of all of the Jagged Little Pill songs, we love it. We listen to it all the time.
Thanks.
So
Love that.
what was that process like, making a new cast album? And was Alanis at all involved in that, or was it just...
She wasn't involved. She was involved throughout the entire process of creating the show, but right around when we were recording the cast album, she was having her baby. So she was not around. She literally had she had her baby, her third child, during the week that we were recording the cast album. So she wasn't around then. She was very busy. But she's always checking in, I mean, Diane and Tom and Brooke and excuse me, Diablo, Cody, everyone on the creative staff. We're constantly, communicating with Alanis, and a lot of videos were shot back and forth with Alanis, and like we would do a run, and if she wasn't able to be there, they would ask us all if it was okay if we just filmed it for Alanis and only Alanis, and so then she'd watch and give her notes, and she's just incredibly generous. And yes, so she was not around specifically for the recording, but I mean, singing Tom, those arrangements that Tom wrote are just absolutely incredible. He's so intuitive and so driven by storytelling that it's just a delight to work with him, because he's just a lovely human being, but he's so smart and he understands good storytelling. And so it's just, and that's how really, many of the creative staff, that's who they are. That's Larby. That's obviously, Diablo is an incredible storyteller, and Diane. So it's just, the combination of all of that has been incredible. But yes, with Alanis at the head, it was we knew we were creating something really special when we did the cast album. I remember the first thing I did was, you're walking up to Electric Lady Studios, which is iconic, in like Jimi Hendrix and Fleetwood Mac and all of these, just iconic people have recorded there. And I was so incredibly intimidated, I mean, I was just like, oh my God. And it had also been about 6 or 7 months since we had done the ART production. So it was also a little bit of sort of reteaching ourselves, how's this go again? How do I sing this? But the first thing I did was Mary Jane. It was just me by myself, and I got there for like 2 hours, and I don't remember how many times I sang through it, but it's incredibly intimidating, but it's like Into the Wood. I was Into the Woods. I was like excited and scared. It's just I was like I because it's these I mean, Mary Jane was always my favorite song on Jagged Little Pill. So the fact that I get to sing it is just, it still just blows my mind. And the fact that I got to record it for an original cast album is just, I still can't believe it.
That's awesome. So, the cast album has been keeping the show alive really well during the pandemic, I'm sure for fans and the team alike. But you were, obviously Jagged Little Pill was one of the shows that were impacted by the shutdown as you were running at that same time. So from your perspective, what was that like to experience that? And then how, in return, how have the cast and team been keeping the show alive throughout the past year?
Well, what was it like? I mean, as we record this, it was exactly a year ago that we did our last show. I mean, I just think that's an interesting little factoid.
Wow.
Blows my mind that it's been a year. Yeah. The 11th was the last show. We didn't know that, I mean, we knew something was coming because we had stopped doing the autograph line, and just that Sunday before, just about 2 or 3 days before the shutdown. I think the last show was on a Wednesday night. That Sunday night before was the last time we were allowed to bring guests backstage. So they were becoming more and more aware of what was happening. But no, it was, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating, and it wasn't just us. It was, everybody that we know in the business, and my friends in Chicago and around the country that are involved in theater. It was absolutely a terrifying feeling of thinking, wow, this there's this disease that basically is going to prohibit people from gathering in large groups. That doesn't bode well for what we do at all. I mean, it was just when you started putting the pieces together, it was just and it has been a very difficult experience, to sort of, it was the right decision to make. I believe that, to shut everything down, but yeah, it's been very difficult. It was a really frustrating and devastating time to find that because at the time you're thinking there's no way they're going to shut down Broadway. That doesn't happen. And so they said 2 weeks, and we were all like, 2 weeks? That's so long. I can't believe they're going to do that. And here it is a year later. But it is an incredible group of people, and our producers have been great about reaching out to us and keeping us informed about what's happening. They don't know much, no more than, they're completely at the mercy of what happens with with the laws, and so but they keep us informed, and that's lovely. And I Elizabeth Stanley and I have gotten very close. I just just sort of took a gamble yesterday and met her for a socially distanced, out on the sidewalk lunch. I actually got to see her, and we're good friends, and so that's been great. We keep in touch, and we have a million Jagged Little Pill text threads. There's like some that are everybody. There's some that include the creative staff. There are some that are just the principals, and it's and they light up every now and then depending on what we're doing, and that's lovely. And we occasionally have a Zoom, and we were able to do the Thanksgiving Day parade, and the One Night Only, the NBC special. Then we did our concert. So there have been like little things that have sort of kept us, connected, which has been great.
That's amazing. And another highlight throughout the past year was the Tony nominations. Congratulations, because you were nominated for Best Featured Actor for your performance in Jagged Little Pill. So that ceremony is supposed to be in our near future. And do you know any details about when that might?
Nope. You know just as much as I do. I mean, I do know they're sending out the nomination certificates now. So something is happening,
That's exciting.
Yeah, so that's literally all I know. That announcement that they made, I think a couple weeks ago, that it's going to coincide with the reopening of Broadway theaters. That's all we know, and we don't really know. I mean, obviously everyone's hopeful that will be sooner than later, but I think we're all thinking hopefully fall, and which means that the Tonys will probably be end of summerish, maybe. I think most of these commercial theaters and their producers are going to want to use for lack of a better word, use the Tony celebration as a sort of springboard into, sort of getting ticket sales back up and getting the show back up and running, to sort of just to get the show out there in such a big way. So, but yeah, I mean, it was an incredible thing, right? All 6 of the principals nominated. And everyone on the creative staff nominated. It was just an actually absolutely incredible thing.
Yeah, that's so special. So you were also seen on Broadway as understudy for Tommy, and Honeymoon in Vegas. So for our audience, which is, comprised of young artists and aspiring artists, can you take us through what are some of the responsibilities and challenges of being an understudy?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, I've done it. I haven't done it a lot, but I have done it. When I was younger, I did it quite a lot. I was always a type that, everyone on a creative staff always wanted me to be the age I am now, even when I was 20. For whatever reason, I was always the guy who they wanted to play, the dad. And so I was always growing mustaches or facial hair to try to make myself look older. I was kind of like the Angela Lansbury, right? Like she was just always kind of 35, even when
Yeah.
she was 20, she was playing the mom of someone who, do you know that story that in the movie The Manchurian Candidate, I think she played the mother of the lead guy who was, I'm completely blanking on, but anyway, she played his mother and she was 2 years younger than he was. So anyway, mine isn't probably as maybe, as extreme as Angela Lansbury's, but it's always kind of been the case for me. So I was always understudying, the guy who was 35 playing the part. And my take on being an understudy is know the bones, know the skeleton of what that person's show is, know their blocking, obviously know their songs and their scenes. If it's a musical, obviously you know their songs. You prepare all that. You do all the actual technical work. But in my humble opinion, I think when people go wrong as understudies is when they are sort of focused on this idea of making it their own. Because what producers want, what directors, what the creative staff wants, what everyone in the show wants from an understudy is for them to go on and be there for not only the storytelling, but to be there and be in all the right places and do all the things for the people around them that are used to a certain thing, right? So if you get too involved in making it your own, then you basically are just throwing off everybody in the play, in the musical. And the truth of it is that no matter what you do, because you are a different human being, it is going to be your own, no matter how hard you try, unless you are literally a doppelganger of the person you're covering. That's my take on being an understudy. And that's how I felt for sure with Harry Connick and with Tony Danza. I was like, my job is not to be the second person that plays this part. I am only here to be the emergency person if that star can't do the show. And I made it very clear at one point. I remember talking to Tony and he was like, we gotta get you on before, because I was leaving. And he was like, we gotta make sure you get a show. And I was like, Tony, no, it's not my part. This is not my part. I do not want to play. I mean, I will if I have to. That's my job. But so that's always how I sort of, especially when you're a standby to a star. In my opinion, I am not the other person that plays the part. I am the person that plays the part when he absolutely can't. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a humbling experience for sure, but it's also like, if that's the gig going in, then it's great. And I was ready, and it would have been amazing, but I never went on for either of them. And I was so grateful because, you don't want that, like, ladies and gentlemen, tonight the role of Tommy Corman will be played by, and everybody in the audience is like, oh, crap. I flew all the way here to see Tony Danza. Boo!
No, I'm sure you would have been great had you have gone on.
But well, I ended up playing Tommy Corman, which was really fun because Gary Griffin, the director, and Dennis Jones, the choreographer, have ties to Chicago, and so they went to the Marriott Theater in Chicago like 2 years later, and decided to do Honeymoon in Vegas, and Gary called me and said, do you want to come play Tommy? I was like, yes, that would be a blast. So I got to do it in Chicago, which is really fun.
That's awesome. So, switching gears a bit, aside from all of your accomplishments on the stage and various stages around the country, you have done a good amount of work on TV, including but not limited to The Blacklist and Godfather of Harlem. So, can you just tell our audiences, for you personally, what is there any difference in, sort of transporting your career and your talents onto the screen? And is it a nice change of pace for you to be on the set versus, a live stage?
It is. It is a nice change of pace. I love working on camera. I really do. It's such a strange thing because it's an entirely different skill, and yet at the same time it's the exact same thing as acting on stage. So, and the really honestly the most difficult thing is that the two worlds as industries, the film and television industry and the theater industry, really don't tend to work well with each other. They, one is, you're doing 8 shows a week. When you're doing theater, the days are long if you're in rehearsals. So, it will often keep you from auditioning for a film, or if you're in a long running show, it can keep you. If you don't have an out, you can't do TV and film because you can't get the day off. So there's and vice versa. If you're in the middle of shooting a TV show, there's no way you're going to be able to go and do a 3-month gig, of a theater gig. So it becomes a sort of schedule wise, a logistical, juggling act. But and then just technically, like I said before, it's a little bit of a switch as an actor, but for the most part, I've always said that what helps me through it is that it's always about just sort of adjusting my perception of the size of my audience. When you're doing, in the same way that if you were doing a musical in a 5,000 seat Fox Theater, you would be doing something very differently than if you were doing something in a 100 seat studio space. You wouldn't be screaming, or if you were, it would be very disconcerting for the audience in a tiny theater. And basically, when you're doing film and TV, I think of it as, you've got basically an audience of one. Everything is edited basically for one person to watch. So I always just imagine there's one person sitting there like 4 or 5 feet from me. And it's true. You get on set with some people, and I remember the first time I did it for Mr. Robot, standing 9 feet from, right behind the cameras from Rami Malek and Christian Slater, and I was like, I can't hear them at all. What? They were just barely just talking like normal people. It's unbelievable. But but then you watch it and you're like, oh, this is perfect. It's perfect film acting. Oh yeah, every experience is a learning lesson. A learning opportunity. That's the way I look at it anyway. I learned so much. I was very lucky that first time I had done anything on film, it was a scene that started with the two of them, and then Christian left, and then I had to walk in and talk to Rami. And I was so grateful that I had just basically watched a master class, in film acting. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to do what they did then.
So we've already mentioned that our audience is comprised of young artists. So my question is, how did you separate yourself from the crowd and make yourself distinct as a performer?
Wow. I don't know that I ever really thought of it in those terms, honestly. I think all you can do is just really try to focus on what you do well and what is truly you, because it's a little bit different in theater, but for the most part, what people want when you walk into the room is a genuine quality. They want truth. Anyone behind that table just wants some kind of earnest honesty coming at them. And obviously our jobs as actors become more difficult when the roles are, if you're auditioning for Game of Thrones, which is something based completely, and you know what I mean, when it becomes something that's uh beyond our reality, then it's that's the challenge, right? Then how do you make that real? um and I've always felt that you make that real by just being who you are first, and then imbuing that into, letting whatever you're doing be imbued with that. um yeah, so I never really thought of it in terms of, well, how do I make myself, stand out. And some people are really good at that, and I do not mean that, that's a bad aspect, but it's just or a bad goal to, to stand out, but that's just never really been my thing. I always tend to just come back to sort of being to like my quiet truth, and then go from there. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
It does.
For sure.
And sort of bouncing off of that, what advice can you offer to, you know, up and coming artists, students that are looking to break into this field, especially during this time, to kind of, keep on going forward and as they pave their own path for their careers?
Well, there are two things that I've learned about, for me, that have helped me. If I could go back to my 20-year-old self and, tell myself, oh God, don't do that. Be prepared. I mean, I don't know how else to say it except it is. I mean, good example. Last night at 8 o'clock, I got 4 scenes for a TV audition that are due tonight, right? So I have to do a self tape that's due. I have to basically, in this afternoon, after I talk to you guys, I'm going to try to cram these lines into my head, because there is absolutely nothing wrong. And I do not think casting directors are averse to someone holding their pages, but I know myself. And I guess that's what I'm saying is, know yourself, know the point when you're freed to be the actor you are, to really be truly a good performer. And if being on book is going to hinder you, then get off book, right? It's as simple as that. For me, I knew that was my truth. I am not a very good actor if I have to keep going down and searching for lines. So I have to get them in me before I can start putting it out there for real. So everything I do, I have to be off book. And that is for me, so that when I send the tape, or when I leave the room, God, someday I hope we can go into rooms again. That we can, then I feel, even if I don't get it, I feel good about what I did. I know I did everything I could do. That goes with, obviously, then you can take that concept and it bleeds into, learning the song, and like sometimes you don't have the time, and you have to give yourself, cut yourself some slack. If it was a really short period of time, then, let yourself off the hook a little bit, for that. But the other thing is, and this helps me a lot in audition situations, especially in person, again, if we ever get back to that. But I wish someone had told me this when I was younger. When you walk into that room, what you need to think is, that person behind the counter is not sitting there going, oh, what's this person going to do? They're not, we have a tendency to maybe think like they're sitting there going, prove it, but really what they want is for you to be the answer. So I like to think of it, flip that around and say, they're sending me so much positive energy. They're going, I really want you to be the one. Please be the one, and that always helps me to think that they're actually feeding me positive energy. And instead of hoping I fail, they want me to succeed, because they want me to solve their problem. So that helps me.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So just winding down, do you have a favorite story maybe, or a favorite experience that you've done that we have yet to mention?
Wow. I have a lot of favorite experiences, but wow, that's such a good question. I mean, I've been around a long time. Uh, I loved playing Trevor Graydon in Thoroughly Modern Millie. I loved playing that part. I love doing comedy. Steve is a little bit funny. Steve, like Diane let me sort of sneak funny moments in with Steve, which I really appreciate, but it's a different kind of, it's not actually like comedy.
Mhm.
Um, loved, loved playing Trevor. I did a musical version of Pride and Prejudice that was written by Paul Gordon, who was Tony nominated for Jane Eyre. One of the most gorgeous scores I have ever heard in my life, certainly ever sung. And I played Colonel Brandon, and it was truly one of the most gratifying, beautiful experiences I've ever had. That was Megan McGinnis played
Wow.
Marianne, and it was just absolutely a phenomenal experience. We did that at Chicago Shakespeare Theater, and then we went out to the Old Globe and did it. And there is still hope that we might film it, for that streaming musical platform, but um, I haven't heard anything. I'm sort of hoping it'll happen sooner than later because, I'm getting a little long in the tooth to maybe keep saying I'm 36. I have a whole song in that musical that's about being it's called The Wrong Side of 5 and 30, because he's just turned 36. And, even at the time when I did it, I was, I don't know, already 43 or something. And I was like, is it really all right for me to say? But they had me in this long red wig and everything, it was amazing. So here's hoping, because that is something that still might kind of make its way and have a longer life. And
Yeah.
If you ever find any way to sort of check it out, I would highly recommend it because it's a beautiful show.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations on your incredible career. I want to encourage folks to keep an eye out for Jagged Little Pill. Hopefully in the fall, a reopening. But in the meantime, check out that cast album and everything that they have put out there. It's amazing. And yeah, thank you for, sharing advice, your career, your journey with us and our audiences today.
Thanks for having me. It was great talking to you both.
Thank you. And we will stay in touch. All the best, stay well and healthy. And we'll hope to catch up with you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay well, both of you. Stay well, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sean. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Bye.